Gamma Java. Hello, everyone. Dear students, today it is my pleasure to introduce you our instructor, Alexander Todorov. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
He will be leading our Python programming with Django framework course. And today you will be able to learn more about his experience, more about course and certification benefits. Alex, tell our students more about yourself, your experience, and how many years you have working in IT industry.
Sure. So I learned programming when I was in school. So that was when I was around 15, 16 years old. And I've been programming since then pretty much every single day. And very early, around when I was 21, 22, still in university, I started pursuing a career as a professional software developer. And that's what I have been working ever since. So I have more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry. In the beginning, I was a software developer. After about 3 years, changing different companies and different technologies, I discovered Python. And the knowledge of Python actually led me to transition into a career of software tester, where I have spent the majority of my career so far. And over the course of those many years, I have worked on different projects. I have also worked on some web development projects, different types of testing tools, automation tools, and all kinds of different things which relate to Python or they are built with Python. During that time, of course, there have been many new technologies which came up. So I do have some experience with those as well, but my primary language of choice is Python.
Can you tell more about the Python language?
Yes, Python, sure. Python language has been around for 30 years or so, even a little bit more. It started as a hobby project, late 89, early 1990. And it is an open source language, like all of the modern programming languages. So over the course of these many years, the Python language has gained prominence. It has been stable out there. There is a huge community, millions of developers using Python around the world, thousands of companies using Python around the world. And nowadays, in the last few years, Python is consistently ranked one of the topmost programming languages in the world. It's usually always in the top 5 together with other languages. So it is a good choice as a starting languages. Now, there are a few features which kind of make Python a very good choice. From the very beginning, the language is designed to be easy to read. So when you read Python source code, it looks like plain English. The idea is that you read from top to bottom, left to right, and it sounds like an English statement. And this is something that you can see everywhere around to the language. Everything is explicit. The idea is that it's easy to read, and when it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, and by extension, that makes the language easy to learn. The fact that the language is easy to learn and is easy to understand doesn't make it any less better. It's a functional language. Together, same popularity like other languages. Around the year 2000, Google was building the Google search engine with Python that allowed them to experiment with features very quickly. And that was the time where Google was like building up their organization and gaining a lot of popularity. Since then, they have reached a scale which wasn't suitable for Python. They have moved away from the Python language. But the early popularity was influenced by Google. The initial versions, for example, of Instagram, that was also built in Python before Instagram was acquired by Facebook, as far as I know. What else? There are websites, for example, like a platform called Discuss. This is a commenting platform popular on many websites. The original version of this was built with Python and with Django in particular, the Django framework. At the time of its height, the metrics were that they were serving more than 250 million users every single day. So that's quite a lot. A popular traveling website for booking plane tickets called kiwi.com, that was originally built with Python. And as far as I know, some of the services, some of the backend of this website is still built in Python. They've started also experimenting with different technologies as well. In let's say around the last 5 years, maybe Python is kind of gaining new popularity in the fields of data science, machine learning, business intelligence, artificial intelligence. The reason for this is that, like we said, it's an easy to learn language. So that gives the opportunity to scientific researchers to do their research and then implement algorithms in the Python language because it's easy. These people, they are not necessarily career software developers. And once these algorithms, these libraries, once they have been developed and made available to the public, then the general public, software developers, web developers, people who want to build products, they consume those libraries, and on top of them, they build new products. This is what is making Python very popular in all of these domains: machine learning, artificial intelligence, data mining, because there are a lot of algorithms, a lot of libraries ready to use out of the box. And if you're not a specialist in any of these fields, you can just take something which is ready and read the documentation, start using it. So a popular example, for example, is the TensorFlow framework. You can just take this, start using it in your machine learning projects, try to do something cool with it. Another field where Python is popular is controlling robots, Raspberry Pi or Arduino projects. This is more for fun, but still, you can learn how to control these things and make a proof of concept with Python. Another field where Python is, it's very strong. It's web development, of course. In the modern day and age, almost every product is a web product. So there is some web backend that we communicate with either by a web page or via APIs. So Python has very strong frameworks for building API-only layers. If you want to serve other products or other type of internal customers, and Python has very strong frameworks for building web applications which have some page which is presented to the user. Django is one such framework. It is the most popular, but it's not the only one in the Python world. There are many. Django has been around for more than 10 years. It's a mature project. There is a very big community around Django. There are many companies who use Django in development. I already gave a few examples, but there are many, many more. There are thousands of people in the Django community who not only they make the framework better with every single new version, but they're also trying to help newcomers, new developers who have less experience, and they will point out maybe some mistakes that you're making, or they will explain, they will give you help if you're asking some technical question. So you're not going to be alone if you choose the Django framework for web development, and that's probably one of the easiest way to start. I do have a project which I'm working on that is built with Django. It's a web application. We have almost 2 million downloads of this application, and that has been achieved in the last 4 to 5 years. It's relatively easy to work with Django. We do have a lot of people who don't have much experience joining our team. We give them a crash course. Essentially, they learn everything that we're going to learn in the training course, but they have less time for learning. So it's a crash course. It's much shorter for them. And then we put them to work on the real project and see how they go. And they learn by doing. And that has been working for them.
You mentioned that Python is one of the top courses as demand. Can you share, according to your observation, what is the demand for such kind of professionals?
Yep, okay. It's a very good question. I will make a disclaimer at the end of my answer because demand can be regional. So we need to be aware of that. But in the fields where I'm kind of most active, I do see demand for web development from junior to senior positions. I do see demand for software test automation. There are a lot of tools written in Python that help with software testing and test automation. Also, we do see demand for DevOps and sysadmin roles. Again, in the Linux world, there are a lot of tools and a lot of software which is written in Python. And for example, things like Ansible, which is for managing, automating maintenance of hundreds or thousands of Linux servers, this product is written in Python as well. And to a lesser extent, because I'm not in that particular part of the industry, I have seen demand for developers who will work with Python and they will be working on machine learning side of things, you know, data scientists. Usually these are called data science positions. So you do need to understand a little bit of the algorithms and then implement the practical product with Python. Now the disclaimer here is because Python reaches to many areas, it's a popular language and you can use it for pretty much everything. When we say that Python is used, there is demand for jobs in one particular area, we need to be mindful of our own geography. So I live in Sofia, Bulgaria, for example. There are not very positions open for Python development with machine learning because we do not have a lot of companies developing machine learning products in the country. On the other hand, there are much more positions open for Python test automation because there are a lot of countries who need testers and they need to test their products. They choose to do so with Python. Of course, when you know the technology, when you know the language, and you build a little bit of experience, you have the option to work remotely with companies anywhere in the world. I have worked with companies in Switzerland. I've worked with companies in the US, with companies in Canada. I have worked with individual people, not companies, from New Zealand, from Asia, from Africa, from Latin America. So Python is, it's literally everywhere in the world. If you do want to work in a specific niche, which doesn't exist in your country or the market hasn't developed to this point yet, you have to look elsewhere, but there are options.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell more about the course? What topics will be covered and what practical exercises will students work on?
Let me share screen. So in terms of topics, we are looking for a little bit more, we're looking for students with a little bit more knowledge of Python, and we'll comment on this shortly. The standard course, of course, starts with from zero. Let me just open here on the menu just to show the few of the topics. So we introduce the Python language, how it works, a little bit of history. Then we talk about the basic data types, input-output operations, basic operations so that you can create a meaningful program from the very beginning. Then we talk about Boolean values and if conditions loops. So these are the control instructions, structures in your programming language. So how you can make your program take decisions. And then in the first module, we do have functions and additional data types to learn about. Then on the second part of our Python training, we do have more topics. So these are compound data types, which contain elements. And we talk about object-oriented programming. So there's a lot of things to talk about object-oriented programming, classes, methods, attributes, inheritance. We can spend a lot of time here. And there are some useful modules in Python, for example, modules to work with the operating system with files and directories. This is something that you do pretty much all of the time, working with files. Modules to work with date and time. Again, this is something fairly common in Python programming. And at the end of this, we do have these quizzes. Every lesson has a quiz and then a test. So let's click here, start, just to show this. So you have a question. You have 3 or 4 different answers. You choose from them, and this is it. These quizzes and tests, they are intermediate. They are designed to help you gain confidence with your learning. If this is something easy for you, we do have exams at the end of the first part of the Python training and at the end of the second part of the Python training. And our focus for this course will be the Django web framework, which has its own documentation. It has what is called the Django tutorial. So the Django tutorial consists of 7 different parts. And we start with a little bit of history, a little bit of information about the framework itself, how to install this on your own computer, and then you start building an application. It is a relatively simple web application that we're building in this tutorial, and every step of the tutorial is giving you more and more information how to make the application better. For example, how to start saving information in a database. Then, for example, how to design an admin panel for your application and see what objects are in the database. Maybe you want to delete some of them. Maybe you want to have users. Then we have part which focuses on the front end. So maybe you want to have users entering new entries in the database or answering questions on the page. And step by step, this tutorial teaches you how to do all of this, explains the basic principles behind the Django framework. It does have examples, of course, if you get stuck. And then we do have an advanced section of the documentation. We are not covering this in the training, but once you have gone through the first 7 parts, you are ready to continue in the advanced topics of Django. And trust me, it does look very easy, and it is very easy to get an application, to build an application which is up and running and has some functionality. It's doing a meaningful job. And you think, oh, I'm done with Django. I've learned it, and there is so much more to learn. I've been using Django for so many years now, and every time that I have a problem which I don't know the immediate answer to, I start reading the documentation, and I discover something else which I didn't know before. So it's a vast framework. There's a lot to learn around Django. So this is how the training is going to progress. We would like to spend most of the time focusing on the Django framework itself, but we do have the option to spend time on one of the previous parts if necessary.
Thank you. How would you define the prerequisites for this course? What potential students should already have as a knowledge in order to get the most out of this course?
So I will define the prerequisites as having practical knowledge and practical experience with the Python language itself. That would mean knowing what are functions, knowing the basic data types, knowing how to use them, knowing what are the control structures in the language, and having a relatively good idea how to use them. You do not need to be expert in those things, of course, but you do need to kind of have an idea what they are and how we use them. And as we progress forward, there will be more and more knowledge necessary in object-oriented programming, because Django framework has been moving to object-oriented structure. A lot of the parts in the latest version of the Django framework are purely object-oriented. So that means you are working with classes and methods, and there is a specific structure, there's a specific template which you need to follow if you want to build your applications in Django and if you want them to actually work. So you do need some understanding of all of these topics, of all of these principles. I would say if you're already coding in Python, maybe you're doing an internship, or maybe you're just experimenting on your own with some simple projects. Jumping into Django is a very good next step for you. That's how I would define the prerequisites.
And another question from your personal point of view: why should our Georgian students apply for this course and choose it? What will be the core benefits for them?
Yeah, very good question. So we've talked quite a lot about how Python is a very popular language, and you can work in any parts of the industry with Python. But if you have relatively less experience with the language, you need to start from somewhere, and you need to build your credibility as a software engineer. Building web applications with the Django framework is going to give you this opportunity to build your credibility, to build your understanding of how the framework works on one hand, but then on the other hand, you gain a broader understanding of how web applications are put together, what things are important and what aren't important. You get faced with different challenges in building even a simple web application. So you've got a database, you have an admin side of the web application, you do have login and users, you do have testing of your web application. So these are all fields in which you can choose to specialize. And even if you choose none of these fields, let's say you want to work artificial intelligence, or you want to work blockchain, that's the coolest new thing on the market. You need to have the building blocks in Python so you can progress to the next step. And that is a very good way to get your building blocks in order, to gain your understanding and your experience. And also when you go to a job interview, especially for a junior or middle level position, you always get a question: show me something that you have done before, show me a project, or show me your portfolio. Once you have a web application, you can publish this to the internet, send this to prospective employers and tell them, listen, that's what I've done. They can evaluate your skills, and they can ask you specific questions. So you can talk about the application, about different technical challenges. This is going to give you an advantage when you're looking for a job. If you don't have any of this, you will say, yes, I learned this framework, but there's no way for a potential employer to judge what you have learned or what's your experience with the framework. They will always ask you to do something. So you can put yourself, as a student, you can put yourself in an advantage position by first gaining all of this knowledge, and then in the same time building your portfolio so you can show it to potential employers.
At the end of this course, our students will get certificate IT specialist Python, and I can check for some students already attend such course in the last pilot phase. Now the change is that you need to pass the internal exam with 70% or more. Also, you need to create some projects, as Alex said, to have at least a basic portfolio of your own code. And when you are successful on the certificate, you'll get certification IT Specialist Python. And Alex, in your opinion, how will certification help our students in their professional career?
Yeah. So first answer is obvious. Having a certificate of any kind is better than having no certificate at all. having a certificate shows, well, you put effort to learn something, and not only did you put the effort to learn, but you actually went to the exam and passed an exam. So that already sets you apart from a lot of other people who haven't done this. The next advantage that you get from the certificate is, so IT specialist in Python certificate, that's fairly well recognized internationally, which means for every employer that they see that you have this certificate, they immediately know what it is about. They can, and even if they don't know, they can read the program of the certificate of the exam, and they can see the fields in which you have been examined. So that gives an employer a relatively good idea of the minimum amount of skills that you have as a developer. So which is good, you know, that gives you, again, an advantage. And for your own sake, as a person sitting on the exam, once you pass the exam and you have this certificate with your name, that gives you also confidence that, yes, you learned something and you actually know it well enough to pass the criteria of the exam, and then you can start developing your career further. So these are the benefits of having an exam. And like I said, having an exam is much better than having no exam at all.
Can you share your story when you are in beginning of your career, how learning and certification influenced you?
Yeah, I can share my story. So the first 3 years of my career are not very interesting, and they don't really have anything to do with Python. So I've been working in a company here in Sofia at the time, software engineer. And I had a coworker who was interested in Python. He was kind of trying to find other people who may be interested, and he was saying, "Oh, you see, this is so easy. You can do such and such." And he took one weekend and built a blog for himself. And he was showing us, "Oh, you see, you know, I can build my website, and it's so easy, so quick." And then that's how I kind of get hooked into Python. I did some small projects in Python while I was working at this company. We tried using it for some of the company products. There wasn't a good environment for using Python in that particular company. At the time, I did my master thesis for graduation in Python as well. And that led me to actually wanting to work with the language and seeking a different job, different employer. I applied to the position at Red Hat, the big Linux company. And one of the questions on the job interview was, you know, we want you to work as a test engineer, but you need to know Python. At the time, obviously, the people that they've been interviewing didn't have a clue about the language because it wasn't so popular. And I already knew Python. I did have some experience with Python, and I said, yes, I know Python. You know, here's my portfolio, and I was hired immediately. And starting from there, kind of, you know, my interest in the language grew. My interest in the profession, in the field also grew. So I started learning more and more low level of the language itself. How does it work? As an extension to this, I also became instructor with New Horizons. I've been a speaker to many Python conferences in the world. I've been involved in multiple open source projects related to Python. And I have to admit, I do not have a Python certificate when I was starting my career. That came later. I was already working with the language. This is when I sit on the exam and took my certificate. And I've been just active on other fronts in the community. That's kind of my personal story.
Thank you. What would you recommend to our students in order for them to get successfully certified?
Well, my biggest recommendation is to actually study. As an instructor, I do see let's call it a mistake that a lot of people make, because Python looks very easy. A lot of people make the mistake to think that, oh, it's so easy. I'll just read the textbook, I'll read the materials one time and I'm ready. And yes, it does look easy, and because the language is purposely made to look easy. But the understanding that you need to learn the Python language itself is the same understanding that you need for any other programming language. So it's just deceptively easy. That's how it looks. If you don't put the effort to actually understand the concepts which are being explained in the materials, if you don't put the effort to do the exercises to actually showcase that, demonstrate even to yourself that you know these topics and that you can develop a small program. If you don't put the effort to do the training quizzes and the training tests in the textbook, well, you're not going to pass the exam. That's the reality. You do need to study and you do need to take this seriously. That's the first thing that you need to do. And my second advice is to pay attention, because the main design principle of Python is to be easy to understand. Whenever you have an error, the Python interpreter, it's throwing errors back at you, or it's writing some error messages on a terminal. And they actually give you quite a lot of information as to what goes wrong. You just need to pay attention to this information and read it carefully and try to understand what type of mistake you have made so that you get this specific error message. Python as a language, it is very explicit in absolutely everything. And when you have an error, Python is trying to help you and telling you exactly what your error is. But again, you need to pay attention to those things to help yourself. These are my advices for being successful in Python. And I must say, as a person who works in the industry, I do make mistakes every day. That's normal. And sometimes when I'm distracted or I'm trying to do something in a hurry, I'm not paying attention, and I don't understand what I've done wrong, and I go back and make another mistake and another mistake and another mistake until I actually start paying attention and see, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. And then it's an easy fix, and I continue from there. So you do need to pay attention to Python. Python is trying to help you. It's not your enemy. And my third advice, it just applies in general in programming languages. What we study, these are building blocks of the language, building blocks of a web framework that you can build web applications with. You need to understand those. And if you feel like you do not have a full understanding of something, then you have to stop, read again, or do more exercises. Make sure that you have this understanding, because that's crucial. Everything that you build on top of these building blocks requires your understanding to be very stable. If your understanding is wrong, if it's not stable, then everything that you build on top of that is going to be wrong.
Thank you. I will add my own comments to the preparation strategy of our students. Please study every day, because human memory has short-term and long-term memory capacity. And if you study something every day, it is easier to become a long-term memory. And thus, you will remember this subject for much, much longer time. And second one, when you finish the course, please organize your schedule of your activities and engagements, so to be able to prepare and pass the exam in the next maximum 20, 30 days after the last class sessions. Otherwise, you start to forget what you studied during the class, and you just lose time. We have some, very few candidates that still try to certify, and they lose a lot of time. If they count all the time that they spent on study this subject, they'll for sure will show that they spent more time without success compared to the people that are focused during the class and continue to push in the next 2-3 weeks to get their exam done. Okay. Thank you very much, Alex, for taking time to join us today and share your experience with our students. We hope that today's interview will help our audience to make better decision whether this course is suitable for them or not. See you soon. See you again in February when all trainings will start. Dear students, don't forget to apply for your course before December 30. Bye-bye.